Transgender people face some of the highest rates of hate crime in the United States. A combination of factors like estrangement from family members, misreportings of gender, and discrimination from investigating agencies often lead to a lack of answers in cases involving transgender people. In some of these cases, it also makes it harder to ID a transgendered victim, as is the case here. This is the case of Live Oak Doe. Before we begin, I wanted to remind you, as usual, that there is a case suggestion link in the description box down below if you have a case that you want to see covered here on the channel. There is also contact info and case IDs relevant to today's case in the description box, and my sources are pinned to the top of the comments section as always. I have also finally opened a Twitter account specifically for my channel, so if you want to follow me, you can at ANTrueCrime on Twitter. More importantly, though, I would like to preface today's case with a warning to all viewers that I will absolutely not tolerate, under any circumstances, any sort of transphobic behavior in the comments. It is 100% not welcome here, and I will not allow other viewers to simply make anyone else in my audience who may be transgender feel hurt or discriminated against. Any comments of that sort will be reported and removed. In addition to this, because we cannot be sure at this time the preferred pronouns of today's victim, I will be referring to them using they/them pronouns. But now on to today's case. On July 10th of 1986, a passerby was walking down the 2500 block of Wentworth in the Live Oak neighborhood of South Houston, Texas. It was then that this passerby discovered a person on the ground, unresponsive. The person was ultimately transferred to the Herman Hospital emergency room, and they were there pronounced dead. Now, the cause of death was cardiac arrest. It is believed that this was likely brought on by strangulation, and some sources point toward a theory from investigators that the person had been strangled with a pair of pantyhose. The victim was Black and appeared to likely be a trans woman or gender variant person. Now, this means that at their birth, their sex was male. However, this person had been found wearing what would be considered feminine attire and had used a pair of rolled up socks as breasts. Now, no identification was with the victim, and investigators have been unable to find an identity for the person, who has now been dubbed Live Oak Doe. Because the sex of this person had been obviously male, they have been labeled as male in many of the sources that are available on this case, but this may have only made it more difficult for an identity to be found. Transgender people are often more likely to be estranged from their families, so it's less likely that a family may have been looking for them in the first place. Add to that they may have identified as female among their friends, and any family they may have still been connected with as opposed to male, means that anyone who was looking for them may not be looking for people strictly labeled as male. Again, add to that the fact that discrimination rates against people within the LGBTQ+ community, and especially among those who are transgender, are very high, and you have a recipe for disaster when it comes to solving a case. This is especially true when a case such as this has taken place in the midst of the AIDS epidemic. The fear of AIDS and HIV during this time period led to a ramp up of hate crimes against people within the LGBTQ+ community. It has been shown that this kind of prejudice has led many people to take cases of violence against people in this community less seriously, sometimes even to the extent of refusing to investigate. Thankfully, today there are organizations like the Trans Doe Task Force that are dedicated in helping to name transgender and gender variant does. Here is a portion of what the Trans Doe Task Force says about its work. Transgender and gender variant people are disproportionately targeted in violent crimes and have a higher suicide rate. They are more likely to be estranged from their families or end up vulnerable without adequate support. There are likely to be hundreds of transgender does filed in cold case files as either Jane or John, which may not match the gender they lived under or the descriptions anyone looking for them may have given. We will seek out and find these individuals who have slipped through the cracks so that they can have a chance of being identified using the latest advances in forensic science and technology. The work that the Transdo Task Force is doing is extremely important. I would absolutely urge all of you to take a look at their website, which is included in my list of sources in the comment section, and consider making a donation to help them to continue to do the wonderful work that they are doing. When it comes to the case of Live Oak Doe specifically, the Transdo Task Force has been instrumental in taking what seemed like a largely untouched case and putting it back into the public eye. On February 16th of 2019, the Transdo Task Force revealed 2 new forensic illustrations of Live Oak Doe, which were created by illustrator Kim Parkhurst. Then, a year later, in January of 2020, they submitted Live Oak Doe's case to the DNA Doe Project. Now, we've discussed the DNA Doe Project on this channel before. They, like the Transdo Task Force, are doing amazing work in helping to find the names of does across the United States. Now, they have helped to uncover a number of names so far, and this includes the name of Belle in the Well, which we covered on this channel prior to her identity being discovered. They have a list of active cases being worked on as we speak, and have a number of cases that are also needing further funding in order to fully sequence the DNA of the unidentified victims. Now, I've also included a link to the DNA Doe Project in the list of sources in the comment section if you are interested in learning more about their work or in making a donation to also help them fully fund pending cases. On February 1st of 2020, the DNA Doe Project announced that it would be taking on Live Oak Doe as their 3rd case from the Transdo Task Force. And as of August 29th, 2020, they have fully sequenced Live Oak Doe's DNA. Now, for full transparency, it does not seem that all of the sources on this case have updated their pages to include that DNA has been sequenced, but I just wanted to let you all know that it has been, and it is being compared for potential matches. Now, Live Oak Doe was discovered within minutes of the incident that ultimately took their life, which means that dental records and fingerprints were also easy to obtain in this case, and they are also on file for comparison purposes. Live Oak Doe was likely between 20 and 30 years old and stood at 5 feet 8 inches and weighed about 161 pounds at the time of death. They were wearing pink pants, a gray shirt, a black leather belt with studded spikes, and were using a pair of socks under their shirt as breasts. They had a heart tattoo containing a scroll on their left arm, and their fingernails had last been painted gold. There were 4 earrings in each ear, and on their fingers was a ring with a clear stone and a ring without a stone. They were also wearing 2 gold-colored necklaces. They had needle marks on their arms, indicating that they may have had a drug history, or as Doe Network suggests, they may have possibly been undergoing hormone treatment, which may possibly explain the needle marks. Now, it is important to know that the description of the jewelry varies depending on which source you're looking at. I've done my best to provide as accurate a description as I can from the image of the jewelry and the descriptions provided on the various sites. Now, in addition to this, if you do choose to peruse any of the sources I've provided, I want to warn you that some of these sources do include post-mortem images of the victim's face. I won't be showing those in this video, but I wanted to make sure I gave a heads up to everyone in case you decided to do further research, as some people do find post-mortem images hard to look at. When it comes to theories in this case, it is most likely that Live Oak Doe's death was a hate crime. Some have speculated that the victim may have been working as a sex worker, had been picked up, and then attacked after the person realized that they were transgender. Now, this theory could potentially help to explain why the victim has never been identified, especially if they weren't originally from the area and were working on the streets. However, there is no evidence that Live Oak Doe was a sex worker, so it remains just a theory. But no matter the circumstances under which this person may have been living, someone somewhere cares for them, and they're likely missing them and have been for the past 3 decades. So if you have any information as to Live Oak Doe, I would highly urge you to contact the Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences at 832-927-5000. So what are your thoughts on today's case? I'm very aware that this is the first case of a transgender victim that I have covered on this channel, and I want to make sure that I continue to cover such cases. It's unfortunate that in our society, the odds are so heavily stacked against people from the LGBTQ+ community, but I'm very hopeful that between the Transdo Task Force and the DNA Doe Project, we will ultimately learn the name of Live Oak Doe. Let me know what your thoughts are on this case, though, in the comments down below, and as always, remember to remain respectful respectful. And don't forget to help me keep these cases in the public eye by sharing this video or someone else's or any of the sources I've provided. You may just reach the right person and encourage them to come forward with information that could solve a case. Thank you so much for watching today, and I will see you all again very soon for another case.